I never thought the woman who gave me life would be the one to rip it apart. My mom used to be my safe place, my anchor. When my dad died, it was just the two of us against the world. We cried together, survived together, and built dreams together. But everything shattered the moment she met him. Her new husband. A man who wore a smile on the outside but was poison underneath. At first, I tried to believe he made her happy. I wanted her to have love again, I truly did. But little by little, he crept into every part of our lives, until I became the outsider in my own family. I still remember the day it all fell apart like it happened 5 minutes ago. I came home from work, exhausted but relieved to see the porch light on. But instead of the usual warmth, my mom stood at the door, cold and distant. Her eyes, those same eyes that once looked at me with nothing but love, were filled with something else that night. Disgust, resentment. She said the words slowly, each one stabbing deeper than the last. "You don't belong here anymore. He is my husband now. I am choosing him." I was too stunned to even cry. My world crumbled in seconds. The person I thought would always stand by me no matter what had just disowned me. And worse, for a man who barely knew me. I found myself out on the street that night with nothing but a bag of clothes and a heart full of betrayal. The home I thought was mine was gone. The love I thought was unconditional, erased in an instant. And here is the thing that haunts me. No matter how much time passes, no matter how much I try to move forward, I still hear her voice echoing in my head. The one person I would have died for chose someone else over me. But life has a twisted sense of karma, and this is the story of how everything came back around in a way none of us could have expected. Growing up, it was always just me and my mom. My dad died when I was 8, and from that moment on, it felt like we were two halves of a whole. We had nothing but each other. Money was tight, but love, that was something we had in abundance. My mom worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. Every time I fell, she was there to lift me back up. Every time I doubted myself, she was my biggest cheerleader. I remember nights when we would sit together on the couch, wrapped in blankets, watching old movies. She used to run her fingers through my hair and say, "You and me against the world." Those words were my shield growing up. No matter how hard life got, I believed we would always have each other. When I was in high school, things started to shift. My mom met a man at work, someone new who brought a spark back to her eyes. His name was Mark. At first, I was happy for her. After years of watching her struggle and sacrifice everything for me, I thought maybe she deserved a bit of happiness too. Mark seemed charming. He would bring flowers, tell jokes, and act like the perfect gentleman. I wanted to trust him. I really did. But slowly, things began to change. Mark started making little comments about how much my mom spoiled me. He would laugh it off, but his words stuck. He didn't like how close we were. He didn't like being second to her own child. And soon he started to wedge himself between us. At first, it was subtle. He would plan dinners or outings that didn't include me. He'd whisper in my mom's ear, and I could tell her moods were shifting. She became more distant, more irritable. Arguments between us started happening over the smallest things. I would ask her if she wanted to watch our favorite movie, and she'd snap, "I'm busy. Can't you see that?" I tried to understand. I kept telling myself that it was just a phase, that maybe she was caught up in the excitement of a new relationship. But it got worse. Mark moved in 6 months later. That's when everything unraveled. Suddenly, the house didn't feel like home anymore. I was treated like a guest in my own space. He made the rules. He controlled what we watched on TV, what we ate for dinner, and even when guests could come over. And my mom? She stood by his side, watching silently as my world shrank smaller and smaller. One evening, I overheard a conversation between them. Mark was saying things like, "She's grown now. You've done enough. It's time for her to stand on her own feet." My heart sank. I realized then that he wanted me gone, and what terrified me the most was that my mom didn't argue back. I confronted her the next day, tears streaming down my face. I begged her to see what he was doing, to remember how close we used to be. But she looked at me like I was a stranger. Her voice was cold when she said, "Mark is my husband now. This is his home too." I felt the ground slip from under me. The woman who had once sworn that we would face anything together was now siding with a man who was pushing me out. I knew then that things would never be the same. From that moment on, I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Every little thing I did seemed to annoy them. Every day felt like a countdown to when they would finally tell me to leave, and deep down, I knew it was coming. Looking back, the warning signs were all there. I just refused to see them. I clung to the hope that my mom would come to her senses, that she would realize no man should ever come between her and her child. But hope can be a dangerous thing when it blinds you to reality. And my reality was about to hit harder than I could have ever imagined. The tension at home became unbearable. Every word I spoke seemed to spark an argument. Every glance was met with cold indifference or outright hostility. I started spending more and more time outside, just to avoid the suffocating atmosphere inside those walls. But no matter how long I stayed away, I always had to return, hoping deep down that things might miraculously improve. One night, everything came crashing down. I had been working a late shift and came home exhausted, my feet dragging as I climbed the steps to the front door. The house was dark except for the light in the living room. As I walked in, I immediately sensed something was off. My mom and Mark were sitting together on the couch, their faces tight and serious. My stomach twisted. "Sit down," my mom said, her voice sharp and cold. I lowered myself onto the chair across from them, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might explode. Mark was the one to speak first. "We've been talking," he began, his eyes gleaming with something that felt like victory. "And we've decided it's time for you to move out." I blinked, frozen in place. What? Move out? Where am I supposed to go? My mom crossed her arms and avoided my gaze. "You're old enough to figure that out. This is no longer your home." Her words hit like a slap across the face. My throat tightened as tears welled up. "But this is my home. Our home. Mom, how can you say that?" She finally looked at me, but there was no softness left in her eyes. "Mark and I need space. You are an adult now. It's time you stood on your own 2 feet." I shook my head, my vision blurring. "I am working, I am trying, but I can't just leave like this. I have nowhere to go." Mark stood up, towering over me. "That's not our problem. You have 1 week to pack your things and leave." I turned to my mom, desperate, pleading. "Mom, please, don't do this. You always said we were in this together, remember? You and me against the world." She flinched, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of the mother I used to know. But then her expression hardened again. Things change. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman who had once fought tooth and nail to protect me was now kicking me out like I was nothing. I felt betrayed, abandoned, shattered beyond words. The next week passed in a blur. I packed my belongings in silence, each item a painful reminder of what I was losing. My childhood bedroom, once a place of safety and dreams, now felt like a tomb. Every corner whispered memories I wanted to hold onto, but I knew I had to let go. On my last night there, I stood at the front door with my bags at my feet. My mom stood across from me, arms crossed, eyes cold. Mark lingered behind her, smug and satisfied. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask her one last time to change her mind, but I knew it was useless. I took a deep breath and said quietly, "I hope one day you realize what you've done." She didn't reply. She just shut the door behind me. As I stepped out into the night, the weight of my new reality settled on my shoulders. I was homeless, betrayed by the one person I thought would never turn her back on me. The world felt colder than ever before. I walked aimlessly through the streets that night, my mind racing with fear and heartbreak. I had no plan, no destination, just a broken heart and a shattered soul. But deep down, beneath the pain and despair, a tiny spark began to flicker. A quiet determination whispered that this wasn't the end of my story. Somehow, some way, I would survive this. I would rebuild. And one day, they would see the consequences of what they had done. Those first weeks on my own were the darkest days of my life. I slept in shelters, on friends' couches, and sometimes in my car when I had nowhere else to go. Every night, I replayed my mom's cold words in my head, like a broken record I couldn't shut off. My heart ached, not just because I had lost my home, but because I had lost my mother. But something inside me refused to give up. I worked tirelessly, picking up every shift I could, saving every penny. I knew no one was coming to save me, so I became my own savior. Slowly, painfully, I started to build a new life. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I rented a small apartment, enrolled in night classes, and fought for every inch of progress. Years passed, and little by little, the pain began to dull. I still thought of my mom often, but I buried that part of me deep down. I told myself I didn't care anymore, that I had moved on. But the scars remained, even if they were hidden beneath layers of resilience. Then, one evening, out of nowhere, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. I hesitated for a second, then picked up. "Hello?" I said cautiously. There was silence on the other end, followed by a shaky breath, and then a voice I hadn't heard in years. My mom. "Hi, it's me," she said, her voice trembling. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from," she continued, her voice cracking. "But I didn't know who else to call." Her words poured out like a flood. Mark had left her. After years of manipulating her, isolating her, and draining her financially, he disappeared without a trace, leaving her penniless and alone. He had taken everything, their house, their savings, even the little jewelry she had left from my dad. Now she had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. "I made a terrible mistake," she whispered, sobbing. "I chose him over you, and I lost everything." My mind was spinning. Part of me wanted to slam the phone down, to throw all the pain she caused back in her face. But another part of me, the part that still longed for the mother I used to know, couldn't hang up. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice cold but shaking. "I need your help," she admitted, her sobs growing louder. "Please? I have nowhere else to go." I stood there in silence, gripping the phone tightly. The memories of that night she kicked me out flashed vividly in my mind, her eyes cold and distant, her words sharp and final. And now, here she was, broken and begging. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to let her suffer the way I had. But as much as I tried to harden my heart, I couldn't ignore the truth. She was still my mother. "Where are you?" I asked quietly. She told me she was at a shelter, her voice filled with shame. I gave her my address and told her to come over. As I hung up, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, sadness, relief, and something I couldn't quite name. When she arrived at my apartment, she looked nothing like the strong, proud woman I once knew. Her clothes were tattered, her face lined with worry and regret. She stepped inside hesitantly, her eyes darting around like she couldn't believe where she was. We sat down across from each other, a heavy silence hanging between us. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, her eyes welling with tears. I don't know where else to turn." I stared at her, searching her face for any trace of the mother I had lost. I saw pain, regret, and finally the vulnerability she had hidden for so long. "I built this life without you," I said quietly. "I had to learn to survive because you abandoned me. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" She nodded, her tears falling freely now. "I know, and I will regret it every single day for the rest of my life." We sat in silence for a long moment, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Finally, I took a deep breath. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," I said honestly. "But I can't watch you suffer like this. You can stay here, for now." Her eyes widened, and she burst into sobs, falling to her knees in front of me. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching my hands. "Thank you." As I held her trembling hands, I realized something. Karma had come full circle. She had lost everything because of her choices, and now she was at my mercy. The power dynamic had shifted completely. But even in my pain, I knew that holding on to hatred would only poison me. I wasn't ready to forgive her fully, but I was ready to start healing. And that, I realized, was the real twist in this story. Not her downfall, but my strength. The days that followed were strange and heavy. Having my mom under my roof after all those years felt surreal. Like living in a dream I wasn't sure I wanted to be part of. There were moments of deep awkwardness. Moments when we passed each other in the kitchen and barely exchanged a word. But there were also moments when I saw glimpses of the woman I used to know. The mother who once held me when I cried and whispered that everything would be okay. She kept to herself most of the time, quiet and almost invisible. I knew she was trying not to be a burden, but the weight of her presence was undeniable. I caught her staring at old photos I had managed to keep, tears pooling in her eyes. She never said it out loud, but her face was etched with regret. One evening, as we sat in silence with cups of tea in our hands, she finally broke the stillness. "I think about that night all the time," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I see your face, the pain in your eyes, and I hate myself for what I did." I didn't respond right away. I stared into my cup, watching the steam curl upward. My heart felt like a battlefield, torn between anger and a desperate longing to let go of the hurt. "I needed you," I finally said, my voice thick with emotion. "And you left me when I was at my weakest." She nodded, her tears falling freely. "I know. And I can never undo that. I let someone poison my mind against my own child. I failed you in the worst way a mother can." For the first time, I saw the full weight of her guilt. It didn't erase the past, but it softened something inside me. I realized that while I had been fighting to survive all those years, she had been living with the crushing burden of her choices. And in some ways, that was its own kind of punishment. As weeks turned into months, we slowly began to rebuild something fragile and new. It wasn't the same as before. Too much had happened. Too much trust had been broken. But there was an unspoken understanding between us, a quiet effort to mend what we could. She started picking up small jobs to help with rent, determined not to rely on me completely. I respected that. It showed me she was serious about making amends, not just seeking shelter. Was one day, I came home from work and found her cooking dinner, something she hadn't done since I was a kid. The smell of her homemade soup filled the apartment, and for a brief moment, it felt like old times. We sat down to eat, and though words were few, there was a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. I won't pretend that everything became perfect. Some wounds leave scars that never fully heal. But we both learned something powerful. Forgiveness is not about forgetting or pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about choosing to let go of the anger, so it doesn't destroy you from the inside out. Looking back now, I see how far I've come. From a broken, abandoned child to someone who built a life from nothing. I found strength I never knew I had, and in the end, I became the person I always needed. As for my mom, she learned the hardest way that choices have consequences. She lost years of my life, and no amount of apology can bring them back. But we are both trying, step by fragile step, to build something new. And that is the messy, complicated truth about betrayal and forgiveness. It is never clean, never simple, but sometimes, in the rubble of broken trust, you can still find pieces worth salvaging. To anyone listening who has ever felt abandoned or betrayed by someone they love, know this. You are stronger than you think, and while the scars may never disappear, they are proof that you survived.